Works Department. And for those of you at this meeting, you all live in a special district, whether it be Seabridge, Westport, Mandalay Bay, or Harbor Island. I am just giving we'll be giving a brief update here on where we are at with the water quality feasibility study that's been going on now for about a year. The stage we're in right now is we're actually coming toward the end of this study. Dave, I will call out a few slide or page numbers if you wouldn't mind paging through for me. This is this report that I'm going to be summarizing here because it's 76 pages long. So I will spare you all of the gory details there, but I do want to mention that this is actually available on the city's website. So if you go to the Special Districts page within the Public Works Department section of the city's website, it is posted under, I believe there's a water quality header on the Special Districts website, and this report is posted there along with the exhibits that go along with it, which is where a lot of the in-depth detail is that goes into this report item. Now, this report itself is just a report on the mitigation projects that could potentially help improve water quality within the Channel Islands Harbor. There are a lot of considerations that go into that, whether a mitigation factor or project was considered as a part of this. The craft water consultant, that is the name of the company that was hired as a consultant to run this report, has been working incredibly hard on this, has been doing a lot of number crunching for us, a lot of water quality modeling, things along those lines, and have really put a lot of blood, sweat, and tears into this report. So I wouldn't mind going to the second slide there. So the executive summary page here, really, it just kind of gives you an overview of what this project is going to be. So if you do take the time to read this report, which I highly recommend that you do, make sure that you take the time to really read through some of the text here. There is a lot of text in this report, but we try to make this as graphically friendly as possible to kind of get the message across of what options we have. So, slide 4. One of the main issues that was identified from the very beginning is a key issue, I should say, is harbor circulation. We know harbor circulation is an issue, especially since the power plant was shut down. It has caused that harbor circulation issue has been seen as a cause of some of the main issues we've seen within the harbor: poor water quality, poor visibility, things along those lines. And so I wanted to bring that up as an item here, something that was seen and placed on a high priority level from the consultant. However, circulation is part of an area, what we would call receiving water. So basically, the harbor itself, strategies that would address things within the harbor itself were called receiving water strategies. And circulation is one of those things that are most affected by that, and could potentially have some of the biggest challenges to implementing solutions that deal with receiving water strategies. So this report in general, we wanted to make sure that we were getting across that we were going through many options, both receiving water, both upstream solutions, educational solutions that could potentially cause improvements in what we actually see flow into the harbor through the city's storm drains, through the agricultural fields upstream of the harbor. We found that there are many different options for things that could potentially improve harbor water quality. Keep going here. Go to slide 8, please. And so part of the driving factors here we've identified through the study. We have decreased circulation, we have urban and agricultural runoff discharges. Those are your primary driving factors for decreases in water quality. And this craft water study really distilled those items down into what mitigation measures can address those concerns. And again, without reading every single slide, we've attempted to break these down into constituent things, or how well do these mitigation factors address constituent factors such as nutrients, bacteria, metals, pesticides. Keep going here to slide 11, please. So part of what we did with this study was we created a problem statement. So that problem statement is what exactly, how do we define this in a way that is acceptable to both the community, to the city, to other stakeholders out above and beyond both just the city and individual residents within the community. So people like the agricultural community we've contacted and been in touch with about this, the power plant owners. Those are individual city departments that have stakes in potential mitigation strategies were contacted and these issues were discussed with to determine how we could approach this. What is the problem exactly? And if you'll go to the next slide, please. Through that, we developed goals and objectives, and Craftwater has spent time identifying specific non-structural, structural, and receiving water strategies that would address that problem statement. Now, it wouldn't be a study, I would say a governmental study without challenges, right? So can you go to 15, please? One of the items that the Craftwater study has really focused in on, especially with mitigation strategies and ranking these mitigation strategies that could potentially have better impact over others. How cost effective they are, how easy they are to implement, and what permitting bodies, how many dollars how much money are you spending for the amount of load reduction you're getting in terms of what's actually going into the harbor. So all this is to say that this is a very complex problem, and that certain mitigation strategies have larger challenges than others. Circulating back to what I mentioned earlier, or the circulation strategies within the receiving water areas of the harbor itself. We found through analysis of some of the solutions that were suggested is that those may be some of the hardest, heaviest lifts when it comes to permitting, or they may be some of the most expensive options. But that doesn't necessarily mean they're immediately discounted. It means that they have to be ranked appropriately amongst other potentially more cost-effective or potentially more easily implemented solutions. So a lot of effort's been put into this study to try and appropriately compare those receiving water strategies with other potential solutions. I'm going to skip through a few slides here. And I'm going to highlight a few things as some of the data that Craftwater went through. So if you can go down to slide 26. So Craftwater focused in on a certain set of constituents of concerns. So essentially, what is in the water that is causing a problem? So circulation obviously is something that we've identified as a potential issue. But what is being circulated around the harbor? What is causing some of the problems themselves? So through water quality testing, through the MAC group, the Marine Advisory Committee has been instrumental in this creation of this report, and also in giving us some of the data that we've used to create this report. We've found that some of our primary constituents are potentially agricultural in nature, but we do have some issues with potential urban runoff, and that's not to be too surprising because half of the city basically drains into the Channel Islands Harbor. So our mitigation strategies that were identified within this report really focused in on how well do they address these these specific constituents of concern. And I'm going to go one more slide here. If there's anything that you take away from this report, is that these strategies really focused on some of these four items here: bifenthrin, permethrin, copper, and dissolved oxygen. Those are our key items that any solution is going to have to potentially address at some point in time. So I apologize, it's a very lengthy report, so I wanted to highlight some of the better slides here. So one of the ways that Craftwater put this together is they created a list of mitigation strategies and then created fact sheets to go along with those. So if you go down to slide 37 and 38, please. One more slide there. There we go. So we attempted to categorize mitigation strategies by strategy type, what they, what's their name, what is it, what's an easy way to describe what that strategy is, and then also involve, where is it being implemented? Is this a receiving water strategy? Is this a structural or is this a non-structural strategy? And what its potential improvements will be. And then finally also, what is its permitting considerations and its cost? What kind of planning and considerations do we have to take into account? So if you can go one more slide, please. So now we're really getting into the meat and potatoes of this report, and that is, what are those actual strategies? So the Craftwater evaluated 103 separate strategies to address water quality issues in the harbor, and a lot of those are what we consider non-structural strategies. So non-structural strategies, basically, what can we do that doesn't involve building something that could potentially help with water quality issues in the future? And some of those things that were considered were educational programs with our local agricultural community about how much is too much herbicide or pesticide to apply. Urban runoff and agricultural runoff are major contributors to water quality. What can we do to potentially stop that from happening in the first place? So outreach and training, coordination with agricultural community, illicit discharge elimination, those are all non-structural strategies that were evaluated. Skip down a little bit further to slide 43. So we also took a lot of time to talk about structural strategies as well. And structural strategies are exactly what it sounds like. What can we potentially build that could potentially improve water quality within the harbor? And these are things like, if anyone here has ever been to the Los Angeles Zoo, I'm going to use this as a real world example. The Los Angeles Zoo, the parking lot in the LA Zoo is not just a parking lot. The LA Zoo parking lot is a gigantic filter that basically collects water, the parking lot collects water, and then funnels it into bioswales that then filter that water before it returns back into the groundwater, into the water table. Now, structural strategies can mean something along those lines. Can there be parking lots that it could be converted to be a more a filtration area rather than having it discharged to the harbor? Can there be filtration units installed within different developments within the area that could divert stormwater before it gets to the harbor? Seabridge and Westport were built with storm drain filtration units within those two neighborhoods. Can those be applied to the Mandalay Bay area or to the Harbor Island area as well? Structural strategies in general, as a rule of thumb, are going to be some of your most expensive strategies. So oftentimes, many people look at them because it's a nice, big, shiny project, but it may not be the most effective. So part of this study was to really identify and narrow down what structural strategies could offer the most per dollar benefit to the communities, and are they as effective as non-structural that may cost a lot less? So that there was a lot of effort to put into modeling what those structural BMPs were good at and what potentially they may not be good at, so that way that we can evaluate them evenly with other unlike projects. And then if you can go to the next slide, please. We also, I mentioned earlier, we spoke a lot about receiving water earlier. Receiving water is essentially what can we do in the harbor itself? So receiving water, a lot of times that comes up as a suggestion of, well, why can't we just turn the pumps back on at the power plant?
There you go.
I hear that a lot. I think our Craftwater team has heard that a lot. That is something that we also wanted to make sure that, the city and our consultant were listening to not only that suggestion, but evaluating what it looks like in a real world situation. And the answer is that it's a very difficult solution to implement. And that's not something that I think anyone is unaware of, but there were different ways that we might be able to implement that solution. So Craftwater took 3 different scenarios to evaluate to see what could possibly be done, something similar to Los Alamitos down in Southern California. Are there fish-friendly pumps that might be used? Are there other ways that we can restart pumps and things along those lines? However, permitting considerations within receiving water strategies, particularly with pumps, and the fact that we're dealing with a private property owner, remain very substantial obstacles to just simply flipping the switch. No matter what we do, what the city does, what this community does, I will say is that the current existing pumps, those can't turn back on. They're filled with concrete, they're gone. Any solution would have to, would involve a substantial amount of work in that particular regard. So we want to be as clear-eyed when looking at these things as possible, and we're not saying that receiving water is an ineffective option, because receiving water strategies were seen within our modeling to be very effective. But do they balance out with the cost and the permitting challenges that go along with those things? Okay, can you go to slide 46, please? Now, part of this report is geared toward essentially how can we help pay for these strategies. Money makes the world go round, right? So the communities here, like I said, I'm the special districts manager. The special districts division operates for specific benefit to these communities. We implement items and programs and maintain improvements that are specific to these communities with a specific tax levy that goes along with it. So this potential funding source that goes along with this report really boils down to what other sources of funding are there out there. And the MAC group's been instrumental too in bringing our attention towards other funding sources. The Craft Water group has also spent a lot of time in creating this report, including a lot of the different funding sources. So that is one of the items that I wanted to say. I wanted to bring up and make sure that it was included as a part of this report. I don't want to spend a lot more time going through the specifics of the rest of the slides. You can, like I said, please take a look at those things on our website. The last thing I want to mention here, and I'm gonna have you skip all the way to the very, very end, is, so 73 thereabouts, is that in conclusion, we know that there are a lot of projects that have been evaluated as a part of this report. The next steps really are going to be about how do we plan the implementation and making sure we have the community support and making sure that we're not making decisions in a vacuum. So that's why we're here tonight. I know that this is a very, very heady presentation. There's a lot of detail here. And I'm gonna try and keep this as brief as possible, but if you have any questions, I'm more than happy to answer them. But also please note that you can contact me at my office, the city, anthony.miller@oxnard.org. And again, this is posted on the website, so please take some time to review it if you were so interested. And with that, I'll take any questions.